Welcome to the latest installment of Zrok Office Hours. Today we are going to build an SDK example for the new Zrok SDK. So, what is a Zrok SDK? Zrok SDK is a way to easily build your own applications using Xerox's approach to sharing and ZD's approach to network security, making it all super simple and easy to build nice, slick, peer-to-peer, secure applications. We're going to be working today in Go. The SDK is currently in Go. We'll probably end up supporting some other languages going forward, but for now, we're focusing on Go, and we're going to build a little example application. I've been trying to think about what we might build as an example for a little while now, and talked to a few of my colleagues, including my friend Ken, who worked up this description of a pastebin style application. So, to make a long story short, this is his sort of idealized version of how this will work, and we're going to see how far we can get with this today. I want to keep this relatively simple so that it's a nice, easy to understand SDK example. I don't want to get too carried away. I suspect this pastebin functionality will end up making its way into the core of Zrok, so it'll be a nice, convenient set of commands that come with Zrok to do this sort of thing, including wormholes for files and all kinds of clever stuff when we start getting down the path with Zrok drives and some of those things. But we're going to build sort of the minimum version of this today, and we'll see how long it takes us and how far we get, and we'll try and feel out the right place to sort of snap a line and call it good. Did increase my resolution. If you watched the previous video, the text was a little small. This should be a little easier to see. So I'm trying this out. We'll see how this goes. Other bonus things, I am using a different keyboard today. So I'll give you a hint. My previous keyboard was a Cherry MX Silver Switch keyboard, and I've gone through a lot of different key switches over the years, and I really just figured out that I like linear key switches. My birthday was not that long ago. It was last week, and one of the things I got for my birthday was another keyboard that I've had my eyes on. We'll have to see if anybody can figure out, just off the sound of these key switches, what I might be typing on. Feel free to post a comment. I'd be curious to see if anybody can figure it out. I'll give you a hint there. It's slightly obscure, but we'll see if anyone can guess. So let's take a look at what we've got for an SDK so far real quick. So if you watched the previous Office Hours video, we did some refactoring on the environment package so that there's now a high-level environment API that lets you call this load root function. And that's really about, if you look, actually do it this way. All right, Zrok type F. Right, so find all the files. So this .zrok directory is the environment. So when you go into your Zrok web console and you enable an environment, so I don't have an environment enabled currently, or do I? Do I? Let's find out. Yeah, I do not. So we need to grab my enable token, and this is just a local development environment, so it doesn't matter that you see my enable token. All right, so now we've got an environment enabled. So this environment package is really about accessing that root of configuration and metadata and identities that represent your identity to Zrok and to ZD. So that's our main entry point to getting that environment. Now there's a new SDK package also that has some model objects, so things like share and access, which are Zrok verbs, they're verb nouns, and some of the other high-level objects that are used by the SDK itself. So there's some config objects in here, and then there's share. So there's high-level functions like create share and delete share. So yeah, so we've got some nice high-level things here. There are some wrappers around some of the ZD SDK pieces where you can easily create dialers, so you can dial and get a net con out of this in Go terms. You can also listen for incoming connections really easily. So we need an example application to sort of illustrate how to use this stuff. Eventually, being fairly soon, going to put a small set of docs together for this so that you, along with the example, you'll have a nice doc you can look at to kind of help you figure out how to use this stuff. There'll be this video, and hopefully that'll be a good step towards getting people going with these things. So going back to our pastebin example. So really what this pastebin is I want to just forget all this big wall of text here. But really what this is I want a utility where I can do something like, cat some file into copy to. Let's call it copy to. And when I run that, it'll emit a share token, or eventually we'll make it more ergonomic so that there's a persistent share token. But for now, like, we want to basically have that take some content and copy to, and then we're going to want in another environment the ability to say paste from and have that emit transparently, maybe paste from with a token. And again, we'll make that ergonomic with environment variables and things. But really, we want sort of a magic wormhole through zrok that will let us paste and deal with multiple blocks of paste and that kind of stuff. So we're going to get the minimum version of that going first. So let's start building this copy to utility as our starting point, right? So what we're going to do, I want to cite, let's close all this stuff. I want to put a new package in here called examples, and we'll make another directory called pastebin, and then we'll make another one called command. I like to use the CMD notion for idiom for Go commands. So we'll make another directory and we'll call this one copy to. All right, so we're gonna make a new copy to utility to start with. So let's make a new main in here. All right. And because this is going to be a command, we're going to want to make the package be main. So we're obviously going to start with a func main. And the very first thing we're going to need to do to build this utility is to load our root from the environment. So we're going to say root error is equal to environment, load root. If error is not equal to nil, panic error. So we're going to keep this real simple. So if there's an error, we're just going to panic. So that should give us our environment. So now we can do things like, let's do this. If root is enabled, environment is enabled. Environment is not enabled, right? So if we build this, and I've got my Go path set up to my local zrok folder, and I've got my local zrok folder Go root in my, or Go path in my path. So I should be able to do go install that, and I should now have a copy to, right? So if I do copy to, environment is enabled. So if I do a zrok disable now, not enabled, right? So let's do zrok enable, and then we can do environment is enabled, right? So that lets us load our root, which is, again, all of the access details, authentication information, and ZD identities, that kind of stuff that allows the zrok CLI and any zrok SDK applications to use the ZD network. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we want to create a share. So we're going to assume that our copy to utility is going to create a share when it runs. So, and again, we'll figure out eventually how to make this more ergonomic so that you can kind of persistently leave a reserved share set up in your environment so that your copy to and paste from just always sort of work across whatever environments you want to run. But for now, we're just going to keep it really simple, and we're going to make a share. So share, and then we're going to say, we're going to use the new SDK package, and we're going to say create share, and that takes our root and a share request. So we're going to say SDK.share request, and that takes a backend mode. So we're going to say backend mode is SDK, and we're going to make this a TCP tunnel, backend mode, because all we really care about is a network connection that just emits some data. We don't need HTTP or anything crazy like that. And the backend mode is kind of metadata anyways. The backend mode is used to tell the access what the resource is and how you access it basically. So for this example, for the SDK example, we're just going to call it a TCP tunnel for now. And then the share mode is we're going to say, well, if it's a TCP tunnel, it has to be private. So we're going to say private share mode. And then the target, so we've got backend mode, share mode. We don't have any front ends because front ends are used to select like the public front end or any private, to select a publicly available front end when you do public share. So we don't care about that. We're not going to do any auth for now, so we're going to leave that blank. And then we're going to specify a target, and we're just going to call it pastebin, the name of our application, because we don't really have a target. This target is, again, metadata that describes what the share is accessing. So it's used to display in the web console, and that's the primary thing that it's used for now. It can be used by things accessing the share to figure out what it's pointing at, but we don't really care about this application either. So we're just going to leave it and call it pastebin. And again, we're going to do our error checking. We're going to panic. Hear that? There's a little sound sample. Keystrokes. I like this keyboard a lot. Like I've been a pretty hardcore Cherry MX Silver person for a long time. I kind of like this better. Like I really like this keyboard. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to we need to tell the user the share token, right? So we're going to say printf and we'll try and make it format. So we're going to say paste from, and then we're going to put the token. Access your pastebin with, let's say, paste from, and then put our token here, right? So we'll say share token. So that should tell and we need a new line because it's printf, right? So there we go. So that should tell our user how they can access that. And then we really want to make this, we kind of want to make sure we clean actually, let's not worry about that for now. I was going to go ahead and try and clean the share up. We can do it through the web console. We'll leave it out for now. So the next thing we need to do is we need to make a listener. So we're going to basically need a network listener to listen for inbound connections. So this is pretty simple. All we need to do is do a listener. Oops. You ever get that thing when you're doing a demo or some live coding or something when you can't type very well? I think it's because my brain, I'm trying to stay focused on not saying and being clear in my thinking and stuff, and I feel like my brain is preoccupied with that, so my typing kind of goes out the window a little bit, but hopefully you bear with me. So we're going to say SDK new listener, right? And that takes a share token, so we'll say share token, and it takes our root. So all we have to do now is do this error. If there was an error, then we're going to panic. And that's basically it. So now we've got our listener. So all we need to do now is loop forever. And we're going to say if connection error is equal to listener.accept. So we're going to accept connections and there wasn't an error, then we're going to do something with it. So we're going to need a handle, and we'll take a netcon, right? And for now, we will say go handle con, right? And if there was an error, then we want to do, let's just panic, right? We'll just panic. There shouldn't be. If there is, we'll just panic for now. So in our handle, let's do, all we really need to do for our handle is to write something to that network connection. So we'll say it's an array of bytes, and we're going to say hello from pastebin, right? That'll be our content. And if error is not equal to nil, then we're going to say logris. Let's just not using logris. Let's use format println error /n. All right, and we'll say error. Okay. That should be basically all we need to do to build a network server that uses zrok and the ZD SDK that should coexist along with any other zrok service. That really should be it. So let's make sure it builds first. So we'll try and build it. And then let's do copy to, right? And right now we're not taking any standard in or anything like that. We're just got some hard-coded text. So it should just spit out a pastebin token, right? All right, so we've got that. So we don't have a paste from yet, but we should be able to, if I split this again, we should be able to do zrok access private, and we should be able to use that token, because access private at the end of the day, all it is it's going to know it's a TCP tunnel, so it's going to start a local listener and forward that to this service. So if we do that, we should be able to hit this now and get our pastebin text, right? Great. Right, so that works. So we've basically got a very, very minimal copy to application up and working. So if we quit this and exit this, now all we've got to do is build our paste from. So we'll make a new folder. Let's make a go. Could have done it either way. We'll do it this way. Main, we want, yes, add it. Main, func, main, right? And we're going to do basically the same thing here. So we're going to do, except in this case, we're going to do some very simple argument handling. So we're going to need our share token. So we'll say if len os args is less than 2. So if they didn't specify a command line argument, we're going to say panic usage paste from share token, right? And then otherwise, we're going to set share token. We're going to give it a convenient variable name. We'll call it os args1. And then all we've got to do is do our load root. So root error equals environment.load root. And if there was an error, we're going to panic. And then we need to create access. We need to arrange access. So we're going to say access error equals SDK create access. Pass it our root and our access request. So SDK access request, and that takes a share token. So we're going to say share token, right? We don't need multiple lines. There's only one thing in that request. So then we should be able to say, do our error handling. And that gives us our access. So then we should be able to say connection error new dialer. So we've got a listener for the copy to, which creates a listener that accepts and emits network connections. And in this case, we're going to dial. So we're basically going to do and that takes our share token and our root. If there was an error, then we're going to panic. And then let's go ahead and actually, you know what? I was going to go ahead and put a defer on closing that connection, but we're going to keep this code as simple as we can for the moment. So let's just make a buffer, and then we'll say array of bytes. We'll make a 10 kilobyte buffer, and then we're going to read from that connection, right? So that's going to read up to the size of this buffer, which we know is way smaller than 10 kilobytes. So let's do that. And if there was an error, we'll panic. Otherwise, all we really need to do is do a format println, and then we're going to say string. We're going to cast it to a string, and we want up to the number of bytes read. And that should be our minimum viable paste from. Right? Why is this complaining? Unused variable access. So access contains, so what we get back is a token, a backend mode, and a share token. Right? So the reason we're going to want to hang on to that eventually is to clean up the access. But for now, let's leave that off. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. So all we need to do is what we need to put that back. It's a new variable. So we're going to defer, and defer runs this function when this function goes out of scope. So when main exits, it'll run this defer. So what we're going to do is if error equals SDK.delete access, root, and then we want our access. And if there was an error, in this case, let's just, oh, what the heck, we'll panic. So that will delete our access after we're done. And since we've already talked about defer, let's just do another defer. And we'll say con.close, right? And you might be wondering why I put this con close in a defer, because I could have just done this, right? But if you notice, my IDE complains about that. It's complaining that there's an unhandled error, and I try my best to keep all of these warnings under control. So we put it inside of a function, and we can basically tell the Go linter that we don't care about that return argument, which makes the IDE happy. So you can see I've got a nice green check mark now, which is how I like to try and keep it. So that should basically work. So from the top, we've got a main, and we're looking at a number of arguments. We're making sure the user provided us a share token, and if they did, if they didn't, we're panicking. If they did, then we're setting it in variable. Loading our root like we did before, which loads up the environment details, the authentication, the identities, all that sort of stuff. And then we're calling into zrok through the SDK saying create access for this share token for our enabled environment. And then if that succeeds, then we're deferring this function to clean that access up afterwards once this program is exited. When that succeeds, then we're asking the underlying SDK to dial that share for us and returns us a connection. And then we are deferring a closing of that connection, and then we're just basically reading whatever data is available on that connection for us and printing it out. So if we build all of this, let's go ahead and close that. And in fact, I just Control-C exited this copy to, so if we go back to our web console, you can see there's a paste bin here. So if I run it again, if I run another one of these, right, it's going to make another paste bin and another paste bin, right? So it's not cleaning that up for us. So for now, all we have to do is just delete these. It's not really a big deal, but oops. We can make that automated eventually here. In fact, since we already talked about the defer, let's make sure our let's get rid of that. Okay, make sure we're all built up. And if we do copy to, and then we take our paste from, right? Look at that. Easy peasy. So that worked. So let's go ahead and do the defer on the copy to, so that we've got, we clean up this share after copy to exits. So this is a little different because I'm Control-C'ing out of this process. I can't just use a defer. I have to do this a different way. So what I really need to do is use an OS signal handler, because Control-C is a signal to this program. It's actually a sig term. So what we need to do is we're going to make another little function here. We're going to say clean up, right? And then we're going to pass, we'll figure out what we need to pass afterwards, right? So we'll say error, return nil for now. What we're going to do is once the create share succeeds, we're going to say, we're going to make a channel. Let's call this sig. Let's just call it C. Make chan, and it's an OS signal channel, right? And then we're going to do signal notify on that channel OS interrupt syscall sigterm, not sig abort, sigterm. And then we're going to do we just need to pass, so we need to pass this you know what, let's just do it in line. Let's get rid of the function for now. Let's just say go func, and that's going to block on that channel. So basically this function is going to sit here and wait until this signal shows up. And then what we're going to do is if error equals sdk.delete share, and that takes our root and our share, we'll just panic. That's what we like to do when there's an error in this example. And then what we'll do is, you know what, let's close our listener first. So we'll close our listener, we'll delete our share, and then because we've, oh, if that's the case, then we need listeners down here. So let's just take this stuff and move it up here. Little order of operations thing. Okay. So there we go. So we're going to close our listener, we're going to delete our share, and then because we've overridden the signal handling with our custom handler, we've got to do an OS exit afterwards. Otherwise, it won't exit. It'll just keep running this signal handler every time you send a sig term to it. So given that, we should now be able to do copy to, and we should have our, hey, let's kill that. So we kill this. Oops. Panic, listeners closed. What did I do? Oops. Okay, listeners closed. This error is a normal, it's an ignorable normal error. What this is basically saying is that the underlying ZD SDK that the listener is using is upset that the service has been removed, right? So it's because we deleted the share, the policies got changed underneath it, and that's no longer available to it, so it's complaining. It's fine. For now, we're going to just ignore it. I think if we put our listener close after that, we should be in better shape. Let's try it. Yeah. Yeah, that extra warning is just a race. So let's go ahead and delete all of these extraneous pastebin shares. Okay, so now if we run this, we should get our share, and our share should go away. So we're in good shape there. So in fact, let's checkpoint this. Right. Minimum infrastructure. I believe it's number. So I often tag, I usually try and tag all of my commits with whatever the issue is that they correspond to. So it's actually 379. It's the pastebin SDK example. So let's tag that. And we're on the right branch. Okay. So now let's try and make this more useful to start. So going back to our description of what this pastebin is supposed to do, we basically want to be able to take in something from standard in or from files and then emit it out to stuff on the other side. Let's just do this with standard in for now. So rather than having this hard-coded hello from pastebin, we'll do this. Let's do a so we should be able to do, we need to do a similar thing. Let's do I think we can just do a IO copy. Yeah, we can do that. So let's try that. So if we do, if IO copy returns the number of bytes and error equals IO copy, and our writer is going to be that buff, and our reader is going to be, oh, it's standard in. All right, why doesn't it like that buff? Sure, I'm going to have the one person watching will be screaming at the screen right now, telling me that I should be doing something different. But why can't I want a bytes buffer? So buff equals. Why can't I? Is there a buffer? Let's pull up the docs. Golang bytes buffer writer. I want a writer for that. Bytes package. See, it's IO writer. Buffer. Yeah, type buffer has a write on it, so why isn't it a writer? Oh, I probably have to call new buffer. I want a pointer to it. It's buffer. Yeah, that's what it wants. So let's say, let's just do it this way. Bytes new buffer. Oh, it needs underlying storage. Okay. Well, then for now, what we're going to do is we're going to say const max paste size. And we're going to make it, I don't know, let's call it 64K for now. Right? And then we're going to say var data is a make byte array that's max paste size, right? And then var buff is a bytes buffer. And then we should be able to say yeah, and that should work. And if there's an error, then panic, because that's what we do in this example. Okay. So rather than doing this, we should be able to do let's make another variable and call it paste size for now. Var. Wow. Paste size equals 0, and we'll say think it should work, but if it doesn't, we'll fix it. And what are we upset about? Type int. But I haven't defined n anywhere, so why is it upset? Oh, yeah, it's because this needs to be that. Paste size was just set to 0, which makes it by default as an int, and it actually I'm doing an assignment from an int 64 to an int, whatever the paste size is, so it needs to be int 64. That's what the problem was. Okay, so now we should be able to do, I don't know, what's in our security MD? Yeah, let's take that cat security MD copy to, right? If this worked, should be able to paste that, and it didn't work. We should also borrow this for here. This isn't the problem, but just for the sake of completeness, let's do this max paste size. That way we make sure we read the whole thing. But let's kill that and then go back to our copy to, and we need to debug what's going on here. So let's just do a format println buff read. You know what? Let's get rid of this paste size nonsense. And I bet we can just do this. Make right. Get rid of this data. Or, well, let's just make it an array of bytes, and we'll assign it down here. Get rid of this. And we're gonna do this is going to return number of bytes and the error. So we'll say an error. Let's call this n1. Then we should be able to just do, n1 should just be equal to n. Let's just keep it really simple for now. This probably needs to become a function or something just to make this a little simpler to understand. We'll get it working and then we'll clean it up a little bit. That's not a new variable anymore. If error is not equal nil, then panic error. And now we should be able to just do format println data. Let's do string data, right? That should give us our data. Oops. Paste size. Why is it? Where is it? I don't need that anymore. Still working. Let's do this a different way. See if that works. Yeah, there we go. Okay. That's fine. That's all we need for now. That's simpler and in line too. I don't need to get carried away with that. So we'll just define a data variable and then read all from standard in. That should do the trick. Oh, probably should do some error handling. And if we don't do anything, it should still work. Oh, it's okay. Okay. We'll leave that for the moment. It's a little corner case we're going to have to work around, but we'll leave it for the moment. So now we don't need to spit this out anymore. We're not. So let's just go ahead and build. So if we do this, and then we access it with this, there we go. So we get our text that way. Okay. I think for the sake of keeping this office hours video relatively short, I think I'm going to call it there because we're like 45 minutes already. So this is obviously going to get probably polished up a little bit more. I'm probably going to go ahead and tweak this code a tiny bit. Let's check it in here so that way people that are, the person who's watching can, if they're interested, can take a look at it on GitHub in this state. So we went ahead and got rid of the hard-coded text and added copying in from standard in. So let's just add all that. Use OS standard in to read the pastebin text. Was it 379? Yeah. Commit that. So again, to recap, there's a new SDK. Right, so there's a new SDK in here. We've got a new examples folder, but there's an SDK in here that supports creating shares and accesses and works with the environment components to work with the enabled environment. And that even supports, like out of the box, supports things like if I do a zrok disable right now and I do a run that same command again, right? So if I do my cat security, it's going to complain that it's not enabled, right? So that the SDK takes care of housekeeping like that for us, which is kind of nice. So that the SDK arranges network connectivity for listening and dialing and supports access and shares. It will grow to do other things and it will support other languages, but for now it's all in Go. It's part of zrok. You can take this as take zrok itself as a library dependency and use these components in your own applications. I'm going to put some docs together at some point fairly soon. A bunch of the existing Zrok CLI functionality is going to get refactored to use the SDK directly. So it's the SDK. We're going to basically drink our own champagne there. So right now, if you look at like share public, it's actually doing a lot of the work. Like it's doing environment load root. It's pulling out the Z identities. It's making a zrok client. It's doing a lot of these things itself. When really all of that functionality is now wrapped in, like if you look at share, it's doing these same things. So it does the zrok client and the share API call and those kinds of things for you. So I'm going to refactor all of the existing CLI to use the SDK directly, and then we'll continue to grow the SDK. So to make a long story short, you can build applications like this copy to and paste from that sit alongside the Zrok CLI and are basically parts of the Zrok ecosystem to do whatever clever things you might think of. And that's a model that we're going to support going forward. So anyways, that's the latest office hours. I think next I'll probably do a little bit of a deep dive on some of the innards of Zrok and ZD and how that's all working together to kind of talk about, to round out this sort of SDK understanding and to give everyone a better picture of how these things are working together. It's relatively straightforward. Like Zrok itself isn't doing a ton on top of what OpenZD provides. It's more orchestrating and idiomatically deciding rules about how these things work, but it's and some automation of the OpenZD control plane. But I think it's relatively straightforward to understand. And I'll put some pictures together and we'll talk through some of those things. And I think after that, we're probably going to be in a place where we can start talking about Caddy and talking about Zrok drives and talking about some of the other really interesting wormhole-y, sherry, really slick functionality that's in the pipeline. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you have any idea what this keyboard might be, I'd love to see your guesses. Any suggestions for future office hours videos or any of that sort of stuff, let me know. My name is Michael Quigley. I'm the lead developer working on Zrok. Yeah, and I like doing these videos. They're kind of fun even if no one watches, and if you are watching, thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.